Episode 38, titled Differencing and Lag Features, Fixing Non-Stationarity Without Overfitting. The goal is to stabilize time series before modeling so you reduce surprises. Because data X questions often punish learners who treat time as just another column and ignore the ways drift and dependence distort evaluation. When a series is non-stationary, a model can look accurate for a short window and then fail as the baseline shifts, which creates operational pain and misleading confidence. Differencing and lag features are two of the most common tools for bringing a time series into a form where modeling is more defensible, but they can also be misused in ways that add noise, reduce interpretability, and create leakage. This episode will define lag features and differencing in plain language, show how to choose between first and seasonal differencing based on observed patterns, and explain why over-differencing is a real risk. You will also learn how lag windows should reflect business cycles, how to avoid future information leaks when constructing lags, and how to validate with walk-forward testing. The exam rewards this topic because it sits at the intersection of time series fundamentals, feature engineering discipline, and evaluation integrity. By the end, you should be able to explain what each transformation accomplishes and why you would apply it deliberately rather than automatically. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to the Data X books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A lag feature is simply a past value used as a predictor, meaning you take the value from one or more previous time steps and include it as an input feature for predicting the current or future value.
This aligns with the idea that time series often have memory, where what happened recently influences what happens next.
Lag features can capture momentum, persistence, and delayed effects, such as demand that carries forward, or system load that influences future latency.
The exam may describe that yesterday's value is informative, or that values tend to persist over several periods, and those cues signal lag feature usefulness. Lag features are also the practical bridge between time series modeling and general machine learning, because once you create lagged predictors, many standard models can operate on the data matrix while respecting time structure. However, lag features must be chosen thoughtfully, because too many lags can create redundancy and overfitting, especially when the dataset is not large relative to the number of lagged predictors.
Data X rewards lag understanding because it is a clean, defensible way to represent autocorrelation in a model. Differencing is subtracting previous values to remove trend and stabilize the series, turning a level series into a change series that is often closer to stationary. A first difference takes the current value minus the previous value, which removes a persistent drift in the mean when trend dominates. If a series has a steady upward or downward trend, differencing transforms it into a series of increments, which often has a more stable mean around zero. The exam often signals trend through language like baseline is increasing over time, and differencing is a common correct response to that non-stationarity cue. Differencing changes the meaning of the series because you are no longer modeling the level, you are modeling change, which can make patterns clearer and reduce spurious relationships driven by shared trends. It also supports methods like ARIMA by providing the I step that makes AR and MA components more appropriate. Data X rewards differencing intuition because it demonstrates you know how to handle drift rather than pretending drift is noise. Over-differencing is a real risk because it can create noise, destroy signal, and harm interpretability by turning a meaningful level process into a jittery series of changes. If you difference more than necessary, You can remove not only trend, but also structure that the model could have used, leaving a series that looks like random fluctuations. This makes forecasting harder and can cause models to chase noise, producing unstable predictions. Overdifferencing can also introduce artifacts like negative autocorrelation, where the differenced series appears to swing back and forth artificially because you removed too much smooth structure. The exam may describe a model that becomes noisy after transformation or that loses interpretability, and overdifferencing is a plausible cause. A disciplined approach is to difference only as much as needed to address clear non-stationarity cues, not as a default pre-processing step. Data X rewards this caution because it reflects the principle of parsimony applied to transformations. You do not add complexity or remove structure without justification. When you can say that overdifferencing adds noise and reduces interpretability, you are signaling mature time series judgment.
Choosing first difference versus seasonal difference depends on the pattern you are trying to remove, and the exam expects you to infer that from scenario hints. First differencing targets trend-like drift, where the level steadily moves up or down over time.
Seasonal differencing targets repeating cycles, where the series repeats a pattern at a fixed period, such as weekly, monthly, or yearly, and you difference against the value one cycle ago.
If the scenario describes a repeating pattern tied to a calendar cycle, seasonal differencing may be appropriate to remove that repeating structure and stabilize the series around a more consistent baseline. If the scenario describes a steady drift without repeating cycles, first differencing is often the appropriate choice.
Many real series have both, and the exam may test whether you recognize that a seasonal pattern can remain even after removing trend, which means differencing choice should reflect what dominates.
The key is to use the pattern cues, such as weekly peaks or holiday spikes, to decide whether the non-stationarity is seasonal rather than purely trending. Data X rewards this because it shows you match transformation to structure rather than applying a one-size approach.
Lagged features are also useful for capturing delayed effects and momentum, especially when the impact of an event is not immediate. For example, marketing campaigns can influence demand with a delay. Incidents can influence load in subsequent periods, and customer behavior can carry over across several days. Lag windows let you represent these delayed effects by including the right number of past values, such as 1 day ago, 1 week ago, or several steps back. The exam may describe that changes take time to show up, which is a cue that a short lag and a longer lag might both matter. Lag features can also represent seasonal recurrence, such as the value 1 week ago predicting today, which is a practical way to capture weekly seasonality in a model without specialized seasonal terms. The important point is that lags encode time structure explicitly, turning implicit dependence into explicit predictors. Data X rewards this because it is a concrete way to represent temporal causality and persistence in a model-friendly form. When you can explain lags as delayed memory features, you can justify their inclusion clearly.
Avoiding leakage is non-negotiable, and in time series it means ensuring lag features never use future information, even indirectly. A lag feature must be computed only from values that would have been known at the time of prediction, meaning you can only use past observations relative to the prediction point. Leakage occurs if you accidentally use the current value, a future value, or an aggregate that includes future data when constructing lags or transforms.
The exam may describe a suspiciously strong model performance and ask what went wrong, and time leakage is a common correct explanation in time series contexts.
This also applies to pre-processing steps like scaling and differencing if they are computed using information across the full series, including the evaluation period, which can leak future distribution information into training. The safest mindset is to treat the time boundary as an authorization boundary, where future data is off-limits during training and feature creation.
Data X rewards this integrity because it is central to producing forecasts that work in deployment.
When you state that lags must be strictly past only, you are aligned with correct time series hygiene.
Lag window selection should reflect business cycle length and seasonality, because time structure is rarely arbitrary in real domains. If the business operates on weekly cycles, a lag of 1 week can be informative because it captures same day of week behavior. If the system has hourly cycles, lags that reflect the last few hours and the same hour yesterday might matter. The exam may describe cycles in plain language, such as weekly patterns or monthly billing cycles, and those cues should guide which lags are plausible. Choosing too many lags can create redundancy and noise, while choosing too few can miss meaningful memory and delayed effects. The best exam answer often reflects that you select lags based on domain rhythms rather than blindly choosing an arbitrary window size. This also connects to interpretability, because stakeholders can understand why 1 week ago is a relevant predictor when weekly seasonality is known. Data X rewards this domain-aligned lag selection because it demonstrates that you are modeling the process, not just the numbers. Differencing changes meaning, and that meaning shift is a common exam point because it affects how you interpret forecasts and how you communicate them. When you difference a series, you are modeling changes, not levels, which means the model's output represents how much the series is expected to increase or decrease, not what its absolute value will be. To recover a level forecast, you often need to accumulate predicted changes starting from a known recent level, and that accumulation step introduces its own uncertainty. The exam may ask what a differenced forecast represents, and the correct explanation is that it represents a change relative to the prior period, not an absolute level. This also affects business interpretation because stakeholders may care about the level, such as total demand, while the model is predicting increments. Clear communication requires you to explain that you transformed the problem to stabilize it and that you are forecasting changes which must be translated back into levels for decision-making. Data X rewards this clarity because it prevents misinterpretation of outputs and supports governance.
Lag features and differencing should be combined thoughtfully, not automatically everywhere, because each transformation adds complexity and changes what the model is learning.
In some cases, differencing alone can stabilize the series and reduce spurious trends, making lag modeling more reliable.
In other cases, lag features on levels can be sufficient if the series is already close to stationary and you want to preserve level interpretation. Combining differencing with many lags can create a very high-dimensional feature space that risks overfitting, especially if the dataset is not long. The exam may describe a need to reduce surprises and avoid overfitting, and the best answer often involves applying the minimum effective transformations, validated by performance and residual behavior.
This is consistent with the broader Data X theme of parsimony. Do not add steps unless they provide measurable benefit and do not break interpretability.
You should choose the combination that matches the series structure, such as adding seasonal lags when seasonal patterns dominate.
Data X rewards this because it reflects disciplined feature engineering rather than rote pipelines.
Walk-forward testing is the validation approach that best mimics deployment reality in time series settings because it preserves time order and tests repeated forecasts in sequential windows.
In walk-forward testing, you train on an initial period, test on the next period, then roll forward, expanding or sliding the training window and testing on subsequent periods.
This shows how performance behaves across time and how sensitive the model is to drift and changing conditions.
The exam may describe backtesting
or evaluate on future windows, and walk-forward testing is the correct conceptual match. Random shuffles break the time structure and can produce overly optimistic performance, which is why the exam rewards time-respecting validation. Walk-forward testing also reveals whether differencing and lag features remain effective as the environment changes, which supports decisions about monitoring and retraining.
Data X rewards this because it demonstrates evaluation integrity and practical forecasting discipline.
When you can say that you validate by walking forward in time, you are modeling in a deployment-realistic way.
Documentation of transformations matters because stakeholders need forecasts to remain explainable, and differencing and lag features can otherwise make outputs feel opaque. Documentation should state what differences were applied, such as first difference or seasonal difference, what lag features were included, and how these choices align with observed trends and cycles. It should also state how the model's outputs should be interpreted, especially whether the model predicts levels or changes, and how predictions are converted back to business-relevant units. The exam often rewards documentation because it aligns with governance and reproducibility, ensuring that future users and auditors understand what was done and why. Documentation also helps prevent pipeline drift, where transformations are applied inconsistently across training and production, causing silent errors. When you document transformations, you make it easier to monitor performance changes and to adjust the approach when the series behavior changes. Data X rewards this because it treats modeling as a life cycle process that must remain understandable and defensible. A useful anchor for this episode is that differencing removes drift and lags capture memory, because it separates the two tools by purpose. Differencing is your tool for stabilizing a drifting baseline by focusing on changes rather than levels. Lag features are your tool for capturing dependence by letting the model use past information in a controlled, past-only way. Under exam pressure, this anchor helps you decide whether the scenario is asking you to address non-stationarity, which suggests differencing, or to capture autocorrelation, which suggests lags, or both. It also helps you avoid using one tool to solve the wrong problem, such as using many lags to compensate for a strong trend when differencing would be cleaner. Data X rewards this purpose-driven separation because it makes your reasoning consistent and reduces avoidable overfitting. When you can articulate what each tool is for, you can choose safer, more defensible modeling steps.
To conclude episode 38, name one lag, one difference, and why each helps, because that is the simplest way to demonstrate applied understanding under exam conditions. Choose a lag like 1 day ago or 1 week ago and explain that it captures memory or seasonality by giving the model a past reference that is legitimately available at prediction time. Choose a difference like first difference and explain that it removes drift by turning the series into changes, stabilizing the mean, and reducing spurious trend-driven relationships. Add the caution that over-differencing can create noise and reduce interpretability, so you difference only as much as needed based on observed patterns. Then state that you prevent leakage by constructing lags and differences using past-only information and by validating with walk-forward testing to mimic deployment.
If you can narrate those choices clearly, you will handle Data X questions about differencing, lags, and time series feature engineering with calm, correct judgment.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.